Hello! In today's video, a report from my trip to Öland, one of the best places to go birding in Sweden. For those of you who don't know, Öland is this tiny little island in southeast of Sweden. So, stay tuned and I will take you along for the ride while I'll explore this amazing island. Before we visit Öland, I want to start with some reporting. First off, I have visited a bird ringing event in Västerås. Here you can see a young male reed bunting that was ringed. The staff there were super nice to us. They let us take photos and answered any questions we might have. Here is a dunnock. It's a common bird in Sweden, but they are quite shy and not so easy to see. In the spring, they sing in a high-pitched voice, which beginner birders can confuse with European robin. I will try to get some sound recordings next spring and maybe include it in a future video. We will see. But now we move on to the star of the ringing event. I was so lucky to visit the event on this day, because a yellow-browed warbler got stuck in the nets. Look how small it is compared to the finger. Only a handful of these beauties has ever been ringed in my province. They are a rare visitor from the east. They have a really distinct call that often reveal their whereabouts. I don't have any recorded calls that I can play here, but I will work on it. Maybe in the future. Now we move on to something a little different.
Oh no, the deer is making fun of me.
So, let's quickly look at some recent rare bird reports. I was eating lunch at work one day when I got an alarm for this one and I just flew out of the lunchroom. Can you see it? Here it is. It's a great spotted cuckoo. This was the 10th one to be seen in Sweden, and they have been super hard to twitch, since only one has stayed for more than one day. This one took off in the dusk, never to be seen again. This was the best picture I got. Not great, but that's how it is sometimes. It still counts. This was number 402 on my Sweden list. I also twitched a green warbler, but got even less pictures of that, since it disappeared before I got to the location. But now, let's move on to Öland. This is a clip from Ottenby, the southern tip of Öland. This is the only place in Sweden and one of few places in Europe where at least 400 different bird species have been found. Öland's location is great for attracting migrating birds. It has a lot of variation, coastal marshlands and open meadows, farmland, woodlands with leafy trees, limestone terrace without much vegetation, and in other places a lot of bushes for the birds to hide in. The entire island is very flat and often windy, therefore it's called the Island of Sun and Wind. Cows and sheep walk freely at Ottenby to keep the landscape open. Time for some birds. I have slowed the video down a bit, but my camera house is not suited for slow motion. An upgrade is very expensive, so I need to do my best with what I got. Here are some ducks from Ottenby. We can see golden eyes. We can see Godwall and the tufted ducks. We can see widgeon. Also, notice one of the tufted ducks has a very white base of the beak. They can be quite tricky to tell apart from the scope. If you look closely, this one has a slight hint of tuft on the head. It is a tufted duck after all. A little grebe was hiding from the breeze behind a rock. Males and females look the same. You cannot tell them apart in field. In summer plumage, they are more eye-catching, but like the other grebe species, the colors are toned down in the autumn. It's hard to see the size of the little grebe from this video, but they are actually super small. I was digging through my archives to find a picture of little grebe where you can see the size difference compared to ducks. This super old and highly cropped picture was all I found. It shows how small the little grebe is compared to mallards. No wonder non-birders confuse it for ducklings sometimes. Since there are no ducklings in the winter, it's time to look twice if you see one. With that said, it's time to leave the grebe, widgeons and godwalls at Ottenby and head for northern Öland instead. We start at the coastline of Trollskogen, a very exciting place that has offered some rare birds throughout the years. Last year I twitched a blurry Moltonis warbler here, successfully too. First, it was actually identified on looks and calls to be a western subalpine warbler. Before, both the Moltoni warbler and the western subalpine warbler, together with a third one, the eastern subalpine warbler, were all considered to be the same species. That was, however, before the DNA scientists went mad. Now DNA samples are often needed to be sure about tricky individuals. Okay, enough ranting about that. Let's move on to another rare bird. In 2019, I twitched a black-faced bunting here, also with success. So you never know what is hiding in the bushes, which makes the birding here really exciting. Here are two starlings. They are very common in Sweden. They are really good at mimicking other bird sounds, especially in the spring. Then you need to be careful when identifying on sounds. I have been tricked many times myself by the starlings' mimicking skills. Let's listen to them. In this sound clip, they are not mimicking much, just displaying their typical starling chit-chatter. Here is definitely the worst clip of the day, but it was such a cool experience that I had to include it. It's filmed from the northern coastline of Trollskogen. This was a really big day for migrating long-tailed ducks. I don't know how many I saw on this occasion, but these big groups just kept on coming for the entire time I was there. They were so far out in the ocean that I could barely see them with my naked eye. It looked like a white mist in the distance. This clip was filmed through my spotting scope. You can see the characteristic dark breastbands. Shelducks also have breastbands, but they have darker heads and a different colored pattern on the wings. They are also much bigger and more goose-like in the shape. I was quite surprised to learn that I did not have any pictures of a shelduck, but I do have pictures of a long-tailed duck where you can see it a little better than in this blurry clip. Here is a long-tailed duck flying in a snowy weather in Norway. This one is browner in the face than the ones from my Öland clip, because the picture of this male is taken in February when they look a little different. In the summer, its head, neck and chest will be almost completely black. And here is a resting male. It's easy to see where it gets its name from. Such a beautiful bird. Trollskogen actually have more to offer than just birds. If you walk on the paths, you will find some interesting history along the way. Like this 900-year-old oak tree, for example. It looks so much bigger in reality than in this picture. There are more things to discover, with science providing you with information. And of course, you have the quirky trees shaped by the harsh Öland winds. The trees are probably the inspiration behind Trollskogen's name. Trollskogen means the forest of trolls. I can definitely see a troll living in this forest. I think it's time to move from Trollskogen to the northwest side of the island before things are getting way too scary. The northwest side has also had its fair share of rare birds. Last year I twitched a Swainson's thrush here. The place was packed with birders and the thrush hid well in the bushes, so I did not get any pictures. In 2019, an Eastern Crown Warbler was found here, but I believe only 3 people managed to see it before it disappeared. I was not one of them. I was, however, one of them lucky ones who got to see the Pacific loon here last year. This one is a tough one to identify, especially at a distance. I suggest you pause the video when I point out the characters to look for if you want to learn them. In 3, 2, 1, pause. So, look out for a black-throated diver without the little white patch in the rear. That is a good start when trying to find a Pacific loon. Here is the lighthouse Lång Erik at the northern tip of Öland, with some geese flying behind it. The geese migration at Öland is spectacular. The same day I got to Öland, reports suggest that a birder counted over 91,000 white-fronted geese migrating past Ottenby, and in the same day they counted over 50,000 geese migrating past Nyköping. Both these numbers are record-breaking numbers. Safe to say, it was a good year for the white-fronted goose. Speaking of white-fronted goose, here is a young one I encountered at the Lighthouse Road. Ironically, the young ones are black at the beak base, not white like the name suggests. Adults, however, are white. I also ran into this barnacle goose. They are usually the ones migrating in massive numbers, with a record for one day in Sweden reaching over 250,000 individuals. Bet that gave the birders goosebumps. This family of mute swans was feeding in the ocean. You can be happy that I muted the wind too, it was very loud. The goose Sanders was accompanied by some mallards. The road leading up to the lighthouse has a lot of these bushes around it. It was in this environment that the Swainson's thrush was found. It feels like you can find any rare passerine in here. This is what makes this place so exciting. When I was walking here, I saw something jumping around in the treetops. I had left my tripod in the car this time to spare my hurting knee some weight, so I grabbed my smartphone to film with. It was a lesser spotted woodpecker, the rare cousin of our great spotted woodpecker. At least I had my camera, so I could get some pictures, but no tripod meant freehand photography. Here are some of the results. The red head reveals that this is a male. This woodpecker seems to be a little more athletic than its bigger cousin, often climbing upside down. I think this backlit picture that I got is kind of cool. It's time to visit the last place in Öland for this clip. I will park my car at Böda hamn and walk from there to Karsnabben. Karsnabben is such a beautiful place and really great for birds too, both seabirds and shorebirds. I also accidentally managed to scare a well-camouflaged short-eared owl here on the last day. That time I did not have my camera since I was trying to record sounds of Dunlin. I happened to stumble on this great grey shrike on my way. That was a little too quick, don't you agree? Let's take another look. Cool. I also ran into this group of pheasants. The male certainly has a camouflage disadvantage with its stunning plumage. This time of year, most shorebirds have migrated already, so there are not many left, but I found this group of dunlins. Among them, a sanderling is hiding. Can you find it? If you said this one, I'm sorry, but there is no hope for you, my friend. That is a black-headed gull and not even close to a sanderling. If you said this one, however, congratulations, you have a good eye for details. Shorebirds are a tough group to learn. Little stint is probably the biggest confusion risk here in Sweden. But since the bird in this clip can be compared to dunlins, little stint can easily be excluded by its size. Little stints are much smaller than dunlins, while the sanderling in this clip is of equal size. Other characters to look for in this individual is a very pale bird with grayer back color, white speckled back, brownish color and a black patch on the shoulder. This picture is very cropped and of poor quality, but here it's easier to compare to the dunlin. There are also a fair share of seals here. This one finding the rock a little uncomfortable. This smew was my first observation for the autumn. The other ducks are golden eyes. I think it's time to conclude my trip to Öland. Here is a picture of a typical flat Öland landscape. On my way home, I got an alarm for a red-breasted goose. When I got to the location, this is what I encountered. An absolutely mind-boggling amount of geese flying around, all scared by a white-tailed eagle. Good luck finding the red-breasted in this group. Too bad it was gone, since it's one of the nicest geese. But I have an old picture of it that I can show. Here it is. Nice, huh? So, that's it for this video. Or wait a minute. What about the rare bird that was hiding in northern Öland? Yeah, that is something I want to forget. I was walking around in the area for about 4 hours, searching through every little bush. Or so I thought at least. 20 minutes after I left, someone found a desert warbler here. Just behind these trees is a road, and behind that road is the coastline where the warbler was sitting. There is a cottage there, and I did not go down towards the ocean since I felt like I needed to walk a little too close to the cottage. When I got to the location, some twitchers were waiting for the bird to show. I saw the desert warbler for very short moments when it was flying between bushes. I was there for quite some time, failing to get any pictures. But you know me by now. Of course I have an old picture that I can show. Here it is, also from Öland. This is from 2016. If you managed to stay with me for the entire video without falling asleep, thank you so much for watching,